It is still 4 o'clock when I bang that gavel. I'm going to call the March EIC meeting to order, and happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. Some of us remembered our green, and some of us are in danger. All right, I will open the meeting with the invocation today, if you so inclined, if you'll bow with me. Dear God, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for our blessings. We ask you to be with everyone who is affected by the fires that are surrounding our community, those that have property or homes, and those who are fighting the fire for us. And we count ourselves lucky and thank you so much for our blessings. Be with us when we have conversations today, and help us always be mindful that we're doing this because we love the city that we live in and we want to see it grow and prosper. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Okay. Item number 2 is the Visitor Citizens Forum. And if you don't have items on the agenda and would like to speak, is there anyone signed up to speak on that?
No speakers.
Okay. We do have a little bit of an audience. Is there anybody that wanted to speak on item 2? Nope. Okay. All right. Item 3, approval of the minutes from our February meeting.
I move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve minutes as presented, and we have a second from Kyle. All in favor, please let it be known by raising your hand. All right. Very good, unanimous. And moving on to monthly reports. It says Todd with KEDC, but Todd's not here.
I didn't, yeah, I don't know that we have
Okay.
one. I haven't heard from anybody.
This might be our best meeting ever as far as time goes. As far as time goes. Item 4B. This is our project status.
It is. I did actually have some new pictures, so. Although it's turned into the biggest PowerPoint, it's like 170 megabytes, and it's not a lean project as far as it goes, because we keep adding to it. So, the 7 projects, with the 2 projects at the bottom left being the KSP and Guadalupe Park playground equipment. So the Calu Theater did commence construction, so you've seen there'll be stuff out there on site now. They are working on the roof at this point, kind of tearing apart HVAC equipment. Just a couple of photos that staff and the contractors have been able to take. I'll tell you this, being on the men's over the men's bathroom, I'm so glad we're replacing this.
Are you up on the roof?
Yeah, I've been on a couple of times. You know, it just, I'm glad we're replacing the roof. There was a little section there where I was like, I need to be on a diet, or I need to get off this roof.
Hope you weren't up there during the windy days.
No, I can't, glad not to be up there on a windy day. So that one again, that's scheduled to be done August 31st. Yes. We have some scope that's still to come from Playhouse 2000. Same conversation we had last month. Still have to wrap our heads around that with Jeffrey, and then bring that back as a possible discussion item for the board. The Olympic pool, this is, and I was on vacation last week, and so some of this wasn't updated. We are pretty well at 100% construction documents. So we're going to present the Parks Board at the beginning of April with kind of here's what the vision of it looks like, and then we'll bring that same presentation to EIC, and we'll have these construction documents out on the street momentarily. So excited for that project, and it is not going to be out in mid-March, probably late March. And let's see, golf course. Not the best time to have sand and loose dirt on the ground, but who can plan for all those things? So that when the 50-mile-an-hour winds hit, that was really a pain. We lost in a couple areas about 6 inches in like just little pockets of the greens, but like they had done all this work and it's just a ton of stuff.
No.
And so anyway, we're working our way through all those things, and some you can mitigate and some you just can't. Sand is, I was like, didn't we buy the heavy sand? Wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is kind of how it looks out there now. Mostly it's all dirt, so it's, bringing in that new fill for the tee boxes for the greens. The greens have sand on them now. And then I think we should be sprigging, which is bringing in, we have sod coming in, then we'll sprig the greens second week in April, maybe, is kind of where we're at. But the golf course is tore up right now. New bridges out there for everybody who cares to know. It wasn't one bridge that was $480,000. It was all the bridges that were being reconstructed and some other concrete work. Just for anybody's edification. AC Shriner House. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you have any estimate on when this will be completed?
So the grow season, so what you want is you want 120 days of that sprig to be in. That's going to be the longest piece of that. So the earliest we can get that in is kind of what we're all shooting for, right? It's going to take a minute for us. We get the order in, they send them out. Beginning of August is, so Heart of the Hills is where we want to start, right? And so that's kind of our drop dead deadline, but we are subject to, the weather, right? And it's been a little freaky and don't want another freeze to hit right after we've put something in. Nothing's in the forecast at this point, so I think we're in pretty good shape. So beginning of August, mid-August is where I say we're at. Yes, sir. Yeah. A lot of good things coming for that. So
That feels ambitious, but that'd be great.
it is, but I think that we tried to backdate that calendar based on when, we talked to the Heart of the Hills tournament and said, hey, can you push this back a little bit because we need these days. Every extra day we get is one extra day we get to grow before we, put it out to the public. And so they were amenable to that. And so I think we bought ourselves a couple extra weeks that way. But yeah, it's going to be a really nice asset. Excited for that one. The bridges, they started on the back because it's all construction and concrete, and they're working their way towards the Golf Avenue. They finished the big one that's on number 12, finishing 3B, I think is done, and then 3A, and then 1, and then 6, and then they're going to do a little bit more work, a little bit more concrete work for us. That's MC Fonseca that's doing that piece. And then XGD will be doing the sprigging, we'll doing all that. We had some hogs out last week is what I heard.
Oh, gosh.
I'm gonna find a 22 and some face paint, and I'm going to sleep in the creek, and I'm gonna take care of it. 'Cause it's just a lot of money, and I hate the hog. It's such a pain. And they're smart animals. They're not dumb, and so it's not on the greens. It's on like kind of the edges of them. And on some of the tee boxes. This is on the way back side of the course. And so we have been working on this and continue to do so, but I'm not above, I'll do anything.
You're on the record, but.
I'll do anything that is above board and within the law.
Michael,
Undiscoverable.
I asked Mitch Harrell about the greens the other day because sprigging and are we sodding the tee boxes? Is that the plan?
Yes, sir.
So I asked about that specifically because of the pigs.
Yeah.
He told me that the stuff that they put down, the fertilizer and stuff that they put down when they sod and when they sprig, it made me feel a little bit better because he said the deer won't eat it and the pigs hate it.
Yep.
So it'll keep the smell should keep them off of our new areas.
Typically, they usually will get as close as like the collars of both the greens and the tee boxes, but not typically on them. And so it requires, kind of constantly being, on the ball when it comes to the fertilizer treatments for both the tee boxes and for the greens, because they can do damage in a hurry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shriner House renovation is moving right along. So again, that one is just on budget. Lots of uncovering this and uncovering that. We had some structural issues that we had to address, but we had a budget for that. It's been eaten up. We were hoping for some landscaping budget to be available towards the end of it. That's kind of our contingency. This project, all signs point to, we'll uncover a thing and then, okay, that'll eat 10 or 15 extra grand of something. And then, so our contingencies on this project are whittling. It's still within the budget, and we will make sure it is. It's gonna be a nice product. I think there's just absolutely gonna have to be a phase 2 that HHHC does as far as landscaping and, all that exterior features. And it's gonna be great. It has so much cool potential. So still on budget, still on schedule. Granger McDonald, I have no updates for that one other than UGRA talked to us about separating out the permeable pavers from the drive lanes and making those asphalt. I think we talked about that last time. Boating access grant was submitted, so nothing changed there. And we should have, I think we're gonna do one ribbon cutting for both of these out at Guadalupe. Guadalupe hasn't been done yet. They're about done with KSP. I think they got all their approvals done from staff, from the city, and then moving on over to Guadalupe Park. And so I think April 1st, we should have a ribbon cutting out there. We'll have details to follow for everybody, should you have an opportunity to attend. So that's Guadalupe right now. There's nothing out there. There was a consideration, somebody had asked about repurposing those things. And it's too much, they're too much of a liability. And when they're put in the ground, they're put in like 10 feet of concrete, to make sure they stay. And so when these were budgeted, they were budgeted to rip out of the ground, not to gently place out of the ground. And again, they're 25 years old and some pretty, lots of disrepair, right, in cases. KSP, I think I need some newer photos. These were from before I left. I think that was all covered in green artificial turf now, and should be close to opening, if not open at this point. So, looking good. No updates to any of the rest of the projects here, and Habitat is on the agenda for y'all to discuss in a little bit. So I will turn it over for any questions.
Okay, thank you. I don't hear any questions.
All right.
And then, well, I guess I have one. The Travis Street pump had Drew's name on here. Was there something significant that he was going to update us on?
Well, so Travis Street Pump is part of that expansion of Loop 534, right? So as we get new residential, new commercial, we need those pumps increased to handle that load. When we submitted that to TCEQ for their approval, we had a system in place for the last forever. TCEQ came back and said, well, you guys need to put in a storage tank. Mind you, there's a storage tank less than a mile, well, less than a couple of hundred yards away as the crow flies over the hill. But it's based on suction. And so we've been going back and forth about it. We've been operating this way forever. What is the concern? And I think sometimes it's who you get. But so we've gone back with our engineers and said, hey, we need an additional tank. What size tank do I need? And they don't really tell you. They won't come and say, you need a 25,000 gallon tank or a 500,000 gallon tank. And so we said, do we need a 5-gallon bucket that we put out there? Because we could do that and then we're good. Because we're already operating this way. We know we can operate this way. This is a safety measure on their part. So I'm not usually on that end of the discussion. I'm on the other end. So now I know what it feels like and I understand. So Freeze and Nichols, the engineers for the project, we rescoped the project, and I think we are at an 18,000 gallon storage tank. Doesn't need to be like a massive elevated tank like you see throughout town. This is a smaller tank. It's to handle any kind of suction that would create an empty pocket behind it, because we're increasing those pumps. Staff and the engineers both don't think that it's necessary, but it is a requirement for TCEQ. And so we'll have an update on that hopefully next week. We'll have that one out to bid. So we're still sourcing out. We're putting a fiberglass tank in. There was a fiberglass option and a stainless steel option. The fiberglass was less expensive and still same lifespan. And so we're finalizing all the pricing on that as we speak. So I'll have more to come on that next month.
All right, thank you. Okay. Item 4C, Trina, monthly financial report.
Good afternoon. How's everybody?
Good.
All right, so we are looking at February financials today. And this first slide here is your bond-funded activities, the statement of activities for your bond funds. So you're looking at the yellow column, February, and the revenues for the month are pretty much your interest income, $68,689. Your pool account where your bond funds are held it's $61,500 for the month, and then your one short-term investment we have at $7,100 for the month. Next section down is your projects, and that's $200,226 out for the golf course improvements, $122,613 for the Olympic pool. The Callow Theater has some movement of $2,000, and then Granger McDonald Park of $22,000 for the month. So total project expenses is $347,699. All in all, the bond proceeds minus your project expenses leaves $18,325,000 available for the remainder of the project expenses, and that's there at the very bottom of your sheet there. And then if you can remember, I told you we are keeping interest earnings off limits for the moment till we figure out arbitrage and make sure that's covered. So you have $956,000 net on that. All right, any questions for bond-funded projects? All right, moving on to operational expenses or activities. So again, your current period in the yellow column, so your February sales tax was $602,300 for the month. That was a 24% increase, which was very shocking to us over last February, but it had some future period payments of about $90,000 and then an audit payment of $215,000. So obviously that's an outlier. We'll take that out of future projections, but even if we remove those two larger payments, looks like we'll still be up about 6%. Sales tax year-to-date is $2.193 million, and that puts us ahead of our budget estimate by $34,000, and that's obviously because of the audit payment, because we were behind last month, about $50,000, I believe. We did receive February sales tax last week. That is $366,000. It is down 1%, and it also had a future period payment in it of $77,000. So if we take that out, we'll be even more down. So very volatile, not sure what's going on, but you know, the economy is turning left and right on us. Next revenue down is your interest income, $31,870 for the month. Year to date, $118,000. So we're ahead of budget estimate by $40,000, and you know, we're tracking pretty good on that still. Your next investment that's going to mature is in April, and that's I believe a commercial paper, a par of $2 million. So we'll be getting that cash back. Down to your expenditures, your just regular stuff, $17,000 for City of Kerrville contract and debt service of $213,000. And then down the project section, we released $6,900 for Travis Street Pump Station, and then Shriner University's athletic complex, their year one allocation of $1,088,000. And then Habitat had a draw request of $344,000 for the month. So total expenditures, $1.75 million. Net change for February is a negative $1.1 million. Okay, and on to your cash flow. And this is just this fiscal year's projections. Ending cash balance, bottom row, first column, $4.1 million for the month. And just columns to the right are updated with sales tax projections and projects of how we think they'll be paid out with a remaining cash balance at the end of the year of $4.2 million. And then this slide here is just your regular financial analysis, sales tax comparisons, month over month last year, and budget estimates. And then your chart to the right is your cash analysis, so that has your taxable balance and your short-term investment earnings, yield, I'm sorry. So right now, taxable is at 4.49%. It reduced by about 5 basis points for the month, so it's very slowly declining, the returns. And then bottom chart is just your project commitments and remaining balances. And then we put a cash flow, 5-year cash flow at your place there. So still kind of small on that. But this cash flow has been updated. We took out the bond-funded projects out of it, so this is truly just operational cash. We did leave sales tax flat for the 5 years out at $5.1 million and very minimal interest income that we expect to come in year over year. So total revenues around 5.1 for 5 years to come. Down in the expenditures, we have your ongoing annual services increasing approximately 3 to 4% per year, and then your annual debt service payments as they're required to be paid out. And then all your projects that are active with scheduled payouts year over year. Fiscal year 25 is a super heavy year for us. Looks like $9.2 million is what we expect to pay out in projects for this year. And this is where we get to the cash, your available cash. So your yellow row there, the row right before your yellow one includes your net short-term investments. So we are including those because I have to tie to something. That's going to be your bank account. So you release funds to buy those investments. So your cash at the bank obviously was reduced. So $4.2 million at the bank at the end of the year. But once you have your investments mature, you'll get that $2 million back into the account. So you would truly have $6.2 million in the bank. I was trying to come up with a way for y'all to clearly see what you're holding on to, but you always want to keep into account those investments that are out for the moment, but they'll be back to you. And then the gray line below that dark blue line is just the bond reserve funds that we said we're going to hold. It's not taken out of the cash balance, but it's just keep it mindful that it may come up that we have to pay that, so we don't want to go too far below that. And then we had also talked about how much our debt percent to our revenues are. So I kind of listed out at the very bottom those percentages year over year for you. Yes, debt payments for the year are pretty much half of our overall revenues, right at 50% year over year. But come debt service coverage ratio time, they're looking at everything you have, your available cash balance and project commitments, all that comes into play. So we kind of just put an analysis there for debt percent of your ending cash overall of what the debt looks like compared to all the cash you have.
Looks very different.
Does,
I hope
doesn't
it's
it?
cleaner.
Yeah.
Can you slow down a little bit on that last column and tell me a little bit? I'm having trouble tracking what you're saying
On the
that.
2 rows,
On the debt percentage of ending cash balance.
that's going to be your ending cash balances of the blue line. So your overall debt, which is $2.5 million per year, it's a 40% of your overall cash. The debt scheduled to pay out each year.
We actually have in cash.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So versus revenues, it's really
Okay.
compared to our cash.
Okay. Understood. Thank you.
Trina, can we look forward to the city of Kerrville capping our professional services in 2027 at $230,000 a year with no additional increases?
So I left that flat at that year because we're only on this 4-year contract and we don't know where it's going to go after that.
Maybe.
Clear.
It's probably not our starting point. But yes, sir. Something to consider.
Thank you, Trina, for doing this, because I think that it really does make a difference to be able to see it this way and to have the bond projects pulled out, because that created a more confusing
I understand, yes.
numbers, so thank you.
Any other questions? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, consideration and possible action. And 5A is the amendment to the Economic Development Grant Agreement between Habitat for Humanity and EIC for the installation of public infrastructure for the development of Mariposa. And I know we've got some representatives from Habitat and Michael, so how are we
I
doing?
can start off this one. So we do have members of the board and attorneys for Habitat, as well as Ms. Campana, their executive director. As you know, the way we had originally set the agreement up for Habitat was to separate the funding out into the two tranches of, 1.13 this fiscal year, 1.13 in the next fiscal year. Their schedule has been accelerated, and looks like they're going to be complete with all that infrastructure by June of this year. And so the request from Habitat is there a way that we can accelerate that second tranche of payment to, instead of waiting until kind of October 1, submit an invoice to Trina and Julie, is to push that one forward into this fiscal year. From Trina's standpoint and finance, they looked at it and it wouldn't be a big impediment to the EIC. These are already committed funds. And so, wanted to bring that to y'all. And
How much is that? 1.1?
1.13 per year, so it was 2.26 total. Right.
Roughly 90 days forward or 120 days forward?
The amendment would come next month, and so it would be, if it came, let's say it came next month, it would be in front of council the second meeting in April. So that would be, May, June, July, 5 months.
But not till it's substantially complete?
Well, yeah, so the pay apps this is kind of like a city project. So the way this is done for the city is, we have a contractor come out, they'll do a reimbursement, it's inspected, it's approved, et cetera. And then they can submit their pay apps. They also have to submit, proof of payment to the contractor, and then approved by us as well. So it follows that exact procedure that we have for any city projects that we do. Yes, sir.
We're 2.5 months.
And I will turn it over to Mary. She can.
Okay. There we are. Well, I'm here, happy St. Patrick's Day. Just a fun fact, my family built the Blarney Castle. That does not mean I'm full of Blarney, but, it's my family. We just wanted to really come and have a exciting update of what's happening with Habitat. We have Habitat 2.0. This is where we are. We remain focused on our mission to provide affordable housing for low-income families. And so we have developed a product. One, just to clear the air, Habitat is the builder and the general contractor. There isn't any other builders building our homes at all. I get that question a lot. And what we've done is we've cut our cost, and we have designed a product that has upgrades and will blend in with the market rate homes for a very affordable cost. And our objective is to build a product that someone that's earning 80% of the median family income and below can qualify for without being cost burdened. So that's our objective. And the other objective is long-term affordability. We've come up with some mechanisms that will ensure that these houses remain affordable. So meaning in the deed restrictions, which Greg will tell you more about, but those will, if it sells, it will be sold to another income restricted family. So that is really exciting for our community, and I'm very excited about that. But just to compare the two, there's the traditional Habitat and the Habitat 2.0. Again, we're the builder and contractor. The sales price is going to be 30% no more than 30% of the family's gross income. And so any savings that we've made by cutting cost and in construction with our partners, we're passing on to the homeowner. So our target price for the Habitat 2.0 is $225. We're well below the $275 that's in our contract. We're so excited that this is happening. And so the traditional is the 60% MFI and below. Habitat 2.0 is the 80% MFI. The traditional is built with volunteer labor. Local subcontractors support it. All of our houses have always used subcontractors on them. Anything with a license, the roof, those kind of things, we supplement because our regular volunteers are quite elderly and we don't want anything to happen. So the Habitat 2.0 will be built with subcontractors. It'll be faster and it will have volunteer support. It just will be a quicker time pace and all of that. They both have long-term affordability built in. With our traditional, what we do is we take the cost of the house, subtract it from the appraised value, and we have 2 liens. So that second lien is forgivable after 30 years if the house doesn't sell. So that is what keeps it affordable for the 40 years. With the Habitat 2.0, it's conventional mortgage financing, and it will be in the deed restrictions that Greg will tell you more about, and it's a 40-year deed restriction for the future sale of the home. They both have sweat equity, and they both have home ownership education classes.
Mary, on that 30% of gross household income,
Mhm.
is that a monthly mortgage payment that you're talking about?
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes, sorry about that. So that's exciting. Do y'all have any other questions about this?
Mary, is
far as we
it
go.
public what you told me the other day about your spec home and what it appraised for and what y'all are selling? You said you're selling the homes for $225, but you said the spec home appraised very nicely.
Yeah, it appraised at 280 for that. And that one, we're probably going to sell for 255 because it has a lot of upgrades in it. We have so much cost in it. But we valued engineered the rest of the homes to reduce that. So it was a good learning experience. So, any other?
What is the current 80%? That you said that was
A family of 4, it's 69,400, I believe.
And so you were saying 275 is the current, like, would be the cost of the house?
275 is the cost that HUD says is affordable.
Okay.
And they use that 30% also
Yeah.
for their affordability model, yeah.
But our target sales price is 225, so
good.
not near the 275 at all. And mostly because someone at that income level, they're not set up for success to be able to afford a mortgage that's higher than that. And
Right.
so that's just against our mission, so. And all of the houses will have garages, they'll all have upgrades, they'll all have stone. So you won't be able to tell the difference of a traditional Habitat home and Habitat 2.0 from the outside, which we're really excited about that too.
I think that's a really good change.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So it was good. Okay, any other? And here's Greg about the long-term affordability.
Couple of things to mention. Got about 3 things I want to go over with you. But I want to plant the seed for just your thought process on kind of quasi-public-private partnerships. Habitat, has always had this really cool model where you get volunteers and you build a house and you can build it for super cheap. But it has some real limitations when it comes to scale. When you live in a small community, you can only build so many of those houses a year. So Habitat's come up with this plan to get 44 homes built over, 4 years? 4 years? 3 years. And so you're making a pretty significant dent in the need for housing, especially for low-income families. And what's super cool about this project is this is not an idea that we've come up entirely on our own. Like most good ideas, we stole it from somebody else. the Austin Habitat has kind of paved the way for a lot of the methodologies that we've incorporated into what we're going to do. And they've been very successful at it. And part of what we've been successful in doing is not only figuring out how to price these homes where they're affordable, but also going ahead and selecting a lender that is committed to this process. And Leslie Barnett has worked with us significantly, and we've got a lender that's not only willing to work through the process, but has gotten creative with us in solving some of the legal challenges around the restrictive covenants, which I'll talk to you about in a second, but also doing it with some lender contributions to help lower the cost. So this is really going to meet a really good market segment in Kerrville and provide some really cool homes. So this subdivision is going to have two sets of deed restrictions. One is what you would typically see, can't have, roosters in the backyard, can't park 16 cars on the yard, got to keep the house nice, basic sets of restrictions like that. The way that Habitat used to restrict the sales price of the home was to have a first and a second lien. And the second lien was kind of forgivable over a period of about 20 years. And so every year you were in the home and you followed the rules and you paid your first lien, the second lien would just kind of diminish. Well, after 20 years goes by, that lien is paid off. And during that time, if somebody could figure out how to solve the delta between, what was owed on the first lien, what was owed on the second lien, what the sales price is going to be, it could still be sold and you're not income restricted. The challenge that I faced when I was on EIC, and some of y'all will remember this, is when developers came in and they said, hey, we want some money. You never could figure out, okay, are we going to contribute money to your project and we're just improving your bottom line? Or is it truly not doable without EIC funds? Well, in this case, it's a nonprofit, so there is no money to go anywhere except back into the organization. What is very cool about this is a sustainable model. If Habitat can go through this in the next 4 years and sell all these homes the way they anticipate, they'll have a bucket of money to go do another project. So they won't be starting from zero. So the second set of restrictions are the novel concept that we learned from our conversations with Austin Habitat. And so what it does is it puts a set of restrictive covenants that says the first buyer and every subsequent buyer for a period of either 40 years for one particular buyer. So if they lived in it for 40 years, the restrictions go away after 40 years. But every time it sells, the 40-year shot clock starts over, up to a maximum of 99 years. So every time somebody wants to sell, they can increase their purchase price 2% a year, so cost of living adjustments, and if they've made any improvements to the property, they can also factor that into their sales price. The lender is working with us effectively to subordinate their lien to these income restrictions. And so the deal that we have with them is that if they have to go and foreclose, they will first come back and give Habitat an opportunity to put somebody new in that home that meets all the qualifications that Habitat has. Okay, here's where you guys come in on the subordination. We've talked about subordination previously, but that was in a very different context. We talked about subordination as a means to facilitate a construction loan. Habitat is not pursuing that. Thankfully, they've been given a very generous gift to be able to help make that happen without financing. So we're not talking about subordination in that regard. Every set of restrictive covenants that go into a development are a burden on the land. So you buy this property, you got to follow these rules. You don't follow these rules, there's consequences to them. So as the lender, and EIC is the first lien holder on this property by virtue of the EIC grant agreement, what we're trying to do by putting these deed restrictions in, the use restrictions, and the affordability restrictions is to say, hey, all of this property from here forward is going to sell subject to these restrictions. What we're asking EIC to do is to agree to subordinate EIC's lien to the two different sets of restrictions. So let me give you a practical example. So let's say in some bizarre scenario, EIC defaulted on its Habitat defaulted on its obligation to EIC. EIC would have the right under the deed of trust to foreclose on that property. You take it back, if EIC was not subordinated on these two restrictive covenants, then EIC could turn around and sell those lots with absolutely no restrictions. And that doesn't really serve the broader purpose of trying to make these available for income-restricted families. So that's the first ask is will EIC consider subordination in that context? The second is that the EIC grant agreement essentially has one major qualifier, is that these homes need to sell in that 80 to 120% of AMFI. Y'all understand what that is, I assume. So what we're asking to do, contrary to what the lead reported this morning, is not asking it to go up, but rather to just set the 120 amount as a cap, because Habitat anticipates selling a lot of these homes to folks that are even below the 80% AMFI, down to 60% as Mary had on that slide. So we want to have the ability to serve as many families as possible, even if they don't fit in the 80 to 120 range. If they come in at 60 or 65 or 70, want to have that flexibility to be able to help those families out. Questions?
And so you're saying if you sell some, quite a few at 60%, then you can sell some at the 120%? Is that what you're saying? Have that range?
Up to 120 of AMFI, so anywhere within that range. So I
We're
think
80 to 120 right now.
80
and
to
our-
120 is what it is right
That's what our
now.
agreement says.
So not changing the cap, just removing the floor.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see, okay.
Because our mission is focused on that 80 below,
Right,
so.
right. But that gives you some flexibility.
Yeah,
if
because
you
what we're
are-
going to run into is really the lender's going to dictate a lot of this. Is we go to a lender, and if it's we get some qualified at the 60%, but because of pricing and interest rates and what have you, maybe it's got to go up, maybe it's got to go down. We just want to have that flexibility that we're going to hit the target segment, but it may not be 80 to 120. We'd like some flexibility to go below 80. Does that give you all any concerns? I've tried to think of how it might impact EIC, and I can't think of a negative.
It's gonna affect the lender more so than it would affect us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not sure if it needed an amendment. I mean, it's just
It does.
technically we're out if we sell it at the 80 and below?
I want an amendment.
Okay.
Words on paper mean things in my world.
I get it.
Greg, do you have a slide detailing those deed restrictions?
Have they been
Which ones?
drafted?
Yeah, I've got them all drafted. The regular deed restrictions or the
The
affordability
ones
ones?
that you're asking us to subordinate to?
It's both of them. So I can provide copies of both of those if you'd like to see them. They are finalized.
So basically, it's no more than 2% per year increase in the price, not including improvements. And that they have to resell to someone within that income range. And that if they do sell, whoever they sell it to has a fresh 40 years that they're subject to that, and then except after 99 years it goes away. Is that-
That's right. That's essentially the summary of it.
So from a practical standpoint, you know, if Habitat for Humanity Kirk County were somehow to go away at some point, this development would be essentially designated for that certain income.
Yeah, and so all the,
I'm just trying to think through the practical realities of having these restrictions in place.
yeah, so all of the metrics set out in the agreement are measurable by something other than Habitat. So it's looking to HUD or Texas Department of Housing to come up with what these numbers are. So it's just a math problem. Anytime somebody goes to sell, you'd consult the table, you'd go back and you'd look. So we're going to put when each house sells, there will be a separate set of restrictions that kind of flow out of this master restrictive covenant that will fix the initial sales price. So you'll just be able to do the math going forward is, have they made any improvements? If not, then we just look at the 2% escalation per year, and then that's what it can sell for. And then in terms of the qualifications of the buyer, it'll be that no more than 120% AMFI.
We need to do partial release of liens when
No.
each individual house sells.
Oh,
for
yes,
The EIC.
yes.
Okay. Is there a practical way for us to be able to do that without having to bring every contract in here to get
Yes.
approval?
I think
Yes.
it's already in the EIC
Yeah,
agreement.
I think
isn't
we've
it?
done that before. It goes through finance and we've provided a form. Yep.
I'm sorry, I don't remember the part of the agreement. So Habitat pays EIC back over time? No.
No.
It's a
So
forgivable.
it's forgiven if Habitat fulfills its obligations, which are, selling at no more than that 80 to 120%, which is, that's what we're asking you to remove the floor
So
on.
at the end of the 44 homes sold, then there would be no reason for EIC to be subordinated after that.
Effectively,
think
yes.
that's-
Once,
yeah.
once it's released as to all the properties, but it, again, this is really, really typical in the development world for a developer to have a construction loan, let's call it that for
Right.
purposes of what we're talking about, to agree to subordinate just as to the deed restrictions. Doesn't prevent Habitat from being able to foreclose, it's just, well, if you go back and resell it, you gotta sell it under the same terms as,
Because whoever's first in line, like if they were to foreclose, then everything that happened after would be wiped out.
And then I have one other question, if that's okay. So the 2%, so one of the points that I appreciated that Mary brought up when we were talking about this in the first place is how these families can begin to create some generational wealth. And so do they get the 2% each year? So whenever they sell it, they get that cushion above.
yeah, in fact, we have it drafted in such a way that if it passes down lineally, no reset on the clock.
Oh, nice.
So we really want to try to encourage, long-term home ownership. All these homes have to be owner occupied. There's leasing restrictions on them. So again, we're trying to really make these homes available to people who need them, and so that, investors don't come in there and scoop them up and lease them out for market rate.
So all the marketing is done within.
Yes.
I mean, the management of it, if you foreclose one or wherever else, the marketing is the list of applicants.
Effectively, yes.
Yes. We have over 500 families on our waiting list right now, and so we'll
No.
pre-qualify first and then move it to the lender.
My feeling is that the restrictions really only protect the intent of what we're trying to do, which is to provide affordable housing in the community, so I don't have a issue with that part. I think the other one's more a technicality. I think we all sort of took it for granted that if somebody below 80% of MFI could qualify, that,
That's fine.
we'd be all in about them getting a home, so I don't
I
see it.
guess, excuse me, for interrupting, I think what's bothering me a little bit is like an unintended consequence, and we're thinking of doing this support. What if it goes backwards? What if there isn't a 2% incremental increase of that market?
Great question, Beck. We have language in there that says that if the homeowner feels like the valuation by the math problem, or by the math in the agreement is wrong, they can have it reappraised. And if it appraises below, then that's what they could sell it for.
I thought the 2% was just a ceiling on what
No,
they could sell it for.
I get that part,
Yeah.
but yeah.
It is.
You mean the homeowner or the home buyer?
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, yeah. Okay.
So, does anyone starting with the subordination have any questions or have any issues with us subordinating to the lender on the restrictions? Are we gonna do this as one amendment with both items covered under that
Yeah,
amendment?
it'll be a document that covers both
Okay.
amendments to it, and anything else we need to clean up in that agreement.
Do we need a motion that we're ready for Mike to work on an amendment? Is that what the motion would be? Or do we need to wait and, see
Well,
the amendment? Or just,
You can make that motion, I mean, it's up to,
Would that
Corporation.
make you more
bring it back.
comfortable for our minutes to reflect?
well, it's gonna be brought back to you, for you all to review. and
approve.
Approve, yes, ma'am.
So it's not necessary, but if we want to do that, to direct that, then we can do that. So if you want to make a motion,
I will move to direct Mike to make that amendment and such that it supports what Habitat is trying to achieve.
okay, so let me ask you this, is your amendment to, draft an agreement that does both items? We've talked about the restrictions going back to 5A as far as the development agreement and the timeline, and pushing that forward. Do we want to have a
Oh.
discussion about that part first?
My thoughts on that basically is, it's a relatively significant amount of money. I mean, it's $1.1 million that's maybe 3 or 4 months paid out faster. And I think it's great that Habitat's been, very efficient with this process and got it done ahead of time. And therefore, we'll be delivering homes sooner than we thought, which is to the benefit of the community. I think from EIC's point of view, we're making 4.5%, and $1.1 million at 4.5% for 3 months is probably, $10,000 to $15,000. So I think we just kind of have to weigh the cost benefit of that.
Sense. Thank you, Craig. Other thoughts, comments, questions about, accelerating the repayment schedule? And Trina, just to reiterate, you said that it's not going to put us in any kind of financial burden to accelerate the timeline.
No, ma'am, y'all have the cash flow right now. I mean,
Okay.
nothing.
So, if our goal is to help with creating this affordability for these homes, it doesn't seem to me like 10 to 15,000 is significant when we're looking at the kinds of interest that we're bringing in.
I agree with
My
that.
thoughts.
Agree? Okay. All right, so I guess if you want to make a motion now,
Then I will move that an amendment be created so that we can take a look at the amendment and that we also approve of moving up the schedule to release payment to them.
okay, so we're motioning that we're going to ask Mike to draft with Greg, in cooperation, the agreement to accelerate the repayment schedule, and to subordinate to the restrictions. And Do you-
Move the floor on the income.
yes, thank you. And also to, remove the 80% and let it be, capped, just capped at 120%. Right. And is this something that we will likely see next meeting for approval, just so
Yes.
Habitat has an idea of the timeline? Okay.
So I'll, between now and the next meeting, I'll share with Mike both sets of restrictive covenants. We can go through those, and the subordination language is already in there, but I'll take Mike's feedback on that, and y'all can have a chance to look at it and then give your approval if you see fit to do so then.
Yeah, it'd be great to see that before the packet comes out, so that
Yep.
we just have some time to chew on it. That would be great. Okay. So we do have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Greg. All in favor, please let it be known by raising your right hand. All right, unanimous. This is exciting.
It is.
So
And so
we'll-
then you guys will look at it at the next meeting?
So we have agreed that we want to include these items in
Okay.
an amendment that will be drafted for us to review at the next meeting, and we can approve it at that time if everybody's in agreement.
Okay.
Or majority.
And if it gets delayed past that, can we look at like doing a special meeting or something? It's just gonna delay us a
Mike is
month.
gonna have it for us.
Yes,
Yeah, so,
yes.
okay.
No delay.
Regularly
Get it done.
Okay,
We want y'all to move as fast as possible.
sounds good. All right, thank you.
Great, thanks, Mary. All right. All right, so, no need for executive session. Items for future agendas. Now, this is gonna sound a little bit, this was something that I was just mulling over today, and I talked to Michael and I talked to Mike, just asking them some questions, and it's not anything that, I just wanna have a discussion, a next meeting, just about the potential for, creating a new agreement with KEDC and potentially looking at an agreement between EIC and the city for a position. I feel like Mike did not bring this to me, but I feel like asking Mike to represent EIC and the city would potentially put him in a weird situation, so to speak. He represents us as EIC, he represents the city on their behalf too. So I think back in 2016, there was some set aside put into the budget in case the EIC board wanted to use that for any kind of legal counsel. So I just wanted to discuss the idea of we may want to consider having our own attorney just for those agreements, just so that there's some back and forth. Don't have to do it, but it is in there. It's designated, it's budgeted for, it's in this year's budget, so something to think about. Questions? All right, that way we can discuss it next month. I can't ask you for any discussion right now because it's not on the agenda, so I will not do that. Mike will get mad at me. But are there any other items for future agendas? Okay. Note the time. It is 4:57 and we are adjourned. Good job, guys.